Okay, so our vitamins are divided into water-soluble vitamins, those vitamins that dissolve easily in water and are excreted by the kidneys, and our fat-soluble vitamins that we need lipoproteins in order to absorb and we tend to store in our fat tissues. Now, what is a vitamin? Well, it's an arbitrary name given to some essential organic compounds that are thought to be required in the human diet, and this is not a hard and fast rule, as I'll explain in later slides. For example, vitamin D you can actually synthesize from sunlight exposure, and yet it's considered to be a vitamin. So exactly what makes a vitamin, what does not make a vitamin, is actually a very arbitrary thing. There was enormous amounts of competition. At one point there was a huge explosion in research into vitamins, and enormous amount of vitamins were discovered, and a couple of years down the line most of them were declassified as vitamins or reclassified as part of the vitamin B complex, which has actually made a complete mess of the vitamin nomenclature. Now, the Polish researcher, I think it was a Polish researcher, discovered vitamins. The first vitamin, thiamine, coined the term vitaamines, the amines of life. He thought that there are certain organic compounds required in the human diet. They probably all have amines, but they don't have the carboxyl group, so they are not amino acids. And he just coined the term vitaamines, which was shortened to vitamins, and that name stuck. However, not all of our vitamins that we recognize as vitamins today have amines, so this is actually an incorrect name, but the name stuck, and that's why we still call them vitamins, even though not all vitamins have that amine group. Okay, so our water-soluble vitamins are easily dispersed in our bodily fluids, excreted in our urine. They're not easily stored in the human body, and for the most part these water-soluble vitamins act as coenzymes when they are combined with the correct protein. And our water-soluble vitamins include vitamin B1, the first vitamin that was ever discovered, thiamine. The guy who discovered thiamine neglected to refer to it as a vitamin A, which is why it's referred as B1 rather than vitamin A. Some other researcher decided to be an asshole, and when he discovered vitamin A, he called that vitamin A, which put, even though thiamine was first discovered, that relegated thiamine into the vitamin B spot. Next up is B2, or riboflavin, B3, or niacin. B4 has been removed from the vitamin group. There used to be a vitamin B4. B4 was declassified as a vitamin, and now there's a gap there. Then there's B5, which is pantothenic acid, B6, which is pyridoxine, B7 or biotin, B8 once existed as a vitamin, it was reclassified, so there's now a gap there. Then we've got B9, which is folic acid. B10 and B11 were declassified as vitamins, so there's a gap now there. And then they got is B12, which is cobalamin, and then our next vitamin is vitamin C. Okay, so we're going to discuss thiamine first, vitamin B1, the first vitamin that was discovered. Thiamine serves as a coenzyme in reactions, and many reactions, but the one way it's best described is this removal of carbon dioxide. So any enzyme that does anything with carbon dioxide, chances are thiamine is a coenzyme in that enzyme. Deficiency manifests as beriberi. Exact origin of this word is unknown. Main symptom is musculoskeletal weakness, and the way thiamine was discovered was when it was realized that certain types of rice, if you especially with white rice, if you mainly eat white rice, you're predisposed to beriberi. If you eat brown rice, you're not predisposed. And the scientist that discovered thiamine basically compared white rice with brown rice, and managed to find that brown rice had this thiamine, and he suspected that that was the thing that was deficient, and that led to beriberi. Next up is vitamin B2, riboflavin, which is a constituent of your flavin nucleotide enzymes, and the most important one for the purposes of this lecture is FAD. So FAD consists of adenine with a ribovitamin B2 molecule plonked onto it. So the way to remember riboflavin with that F is what constitutes the flavin nucleotide enzyme. There's no specific name for vitamin B2 deficiency, such as with beriberi, so it's just referred to as vitamin B2 deficiency syndrome, and it manifests with all sorts of peculiar symptoms, rashes if you're in the eyes, in the mouth, in the genitalia, and neurological abnormalities. So typical sort of symptoms plus be dry lips, skin rashes, red eyes, and fatigue. Though bear in mind that the possibility of having a pure vitamin B2 deficiency is quite uncommon. Typically, if you have a vitamin B deficiency, you have multiple vitamin B group deficiencies, which all sort of combine together to make a very confused clinical picture. But if you had to have a pure vitamin B2 deficiency, these would be your symptoms. And vitamin B3 or niacin, which is a constituent of coenzymes involving oxidation reduction reactions. And for the purposes of this lecture, the most important one is NAD+. So that's niacin, adenine, and adenine in this coenzyme, which harvests electrons and hydrogens. And deficiency results in pellagra. If you take too much, you can get flushed skin. The exact mechanism of this is unclear. B5 or pantothenic acid is a constituent of your coenzyme A. Without vitamin B5, you can't have coenzyme A, and you saw how many steps of the metabolic pathway require coenzyme A. So you don't have this coenzyme A, that's going to mess quite a few metabolic processes up. And pure vitamin B5 deficiency is quite rare, but it's thought that if you have a pure vitamin B5 deficiency, it's going to mainly manifest with neurological disturbances. Remember that the brain especially is heavily dependent on glucose as an energy source. If you don't have coenzyme A, you're not going to be able to get that Krebs cycle going. So it's almost as if your glucose that you have is quite useless. So it makes sense that the brain would be the first sort of organ to be affected, because it's so heavily dependent on the glycolysis and the Krebs cycle. So vitamin B6 is our next one. It's pyridoxine. Combines with phosphate to make pyridoxal phosphate, and pyridoxal phosphate is a coenzyme in your transaminases to convert amino acids into other amino acids. Your deaminase enzymes, which remove those amine groups from our proteins and amino acids, and it's also a coenzyme in your glycogen enzymes. Deficiency is going to cause neurological problems again, and then with the neurological problems it can be convulsions, just as in pellagra you can get skin rashes, and if you have a deficiency of pyridoxine, that phosphate is going to crystallize and you're going to get kidney stones. Next up is vitamin B7 or biotin, which is a coenzyme for carboxylase enzymes. You'll remember that thiamine is a coenzyme for decarboxylase enzymes, so it's not quite the same type of enzyme as the carboxylase enzyme, so don't confuse B1 and B7. B1 is for decarboxylase enzymes and B7 is for carboxylase enzymes. Decarboxylase enzymes mostly remove CO2 molecules, whereas carboxylase enzymes tend to fixate CO2 into a molecule. And deficiency causes pretty much a very similar sort of symptom picture with the previous vitamin B deficiencies: fatigue as in beriberi, depression, neurological disturbances, nausea, dermatitis as in pellagra, and muscle pains as in beriberi. Next one is B9, folic acid, which is necessary for the synthesis of your purine nucleotides. So you need folic acid to make nucleotides like adenine and guanine. And if you think about it, if you don't have adenine and guanine, you're going to be able to make ADP and GTP If you think about it even further, you're not going to be able to make NAD and FAD because you need that adenine for those coenzymes. So without folic acid, the whole sort of cascade, energy metabolic cascade is somewhat messed up. Deficiency is going to result in anemia, GIT problems, basically you need folic acid also to make DNA, so what is affected first before you affect your other enzymes is actually your DNA synthesis, so any tissue where you have rapidly multiplying tissue like your blood cells and your GIT is going to be affected first with impaired cell division and impaired growth. Next is vitamin B12 or cobalamin, which is a coenzyme involved in nucleic acid metabolism. And again, we're going to have anemia and neurological fallout. And I'm pretty sure by now you understand why in an emergency unit, if you have a patient who's in a coma, a lot of the emergency medicine guides will suggest in cases of coma where you don't know why the patient's in a coma, give some vitamin B complex, and then perhaps the coma is due to some sort of vitamin B deficiency, and the vitamin B complex will at least treat that coma while you're trying to find a definitive cause for the coma. Vitamin C, or ascorbate. Ascorbate very easily harvests the hydrogen to become ascorbic acid. Ascorbic acid is needed for collagen, for your intracellular matrix, and for your dentine around the teeth. And if you have a deficiency, you have scurvy. Okay, but it's not a vitamin lecture, it's a bioenergetics lecture, so let's see where our vitamins fit in if we had to take a bird's eye view of all our bioenergetic processes. Start off from the right hand side of our proteins. Our folic acid, pyridoxine, cobalamin, niacin, these are all coenzymes which are necessary for this transamination. Vitamin C is necessary for formation of collagen and for some proteins. And pretty much the same story over here. For our glycolytic pathway to break down to pyruvate, we need NAD, which is made from a niacin, and we need biotin and our pantothenic acid for those for some of those enzyme reactions. For pyruvate to be pushed into the protein side of our metabolic processes, we're going to need pyridoxine. To convert it to lactate, we need NAD, so we need that niacin over there. To push pyruvate into acetyl coenzyme A, we need thiamine, niacin, and pantothenic acid. And for our Krebs cycle, we need NAD and FAD, so that's niacin and riboflavin that we need there. For our electron transport chain, we need the NAD and the FAD to transport the hydrogen through the electron transport chain, so we need niacin and riboflavin over there. For our deaminations, again we had pyridoxine over there to get pyruvate into an amino acid state, and then get amino acids back into a state where it can be used in a Krebs cycle. We again need pyridoxine. Also on our lipid side, once we have the free fatty acids, we need pantothenic acid, biotin, and niacin as part of our coenzymes to get into the acetyl coenzyme A state. And for the sake of completeness, quickly we're going to touch on fat-soluble vitamins. Literally, that's our vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K. You might be wondering what happened to vitamin F, vitamin G, vitamin H, vitamin I, vitamin J. They were all vitamins that were discovered in too much of a hurry by researchers trying to win the next Nobel Prize, and after some time unfortunately it was realized that actually vitamin F to J are not really vitamins at all, and they were declassified as vitamins. Some might say that vitamin D does not deserve to be here because you synthesize most of your vitamin D from sunlight. However, in some circumstances, some populations might actually get most of their vitamin D from the diet, so it's sort of its presence in the vitamin sort of tree is somewhat tolerated. Vitamin K, what happened is many of the vitamins were declassified as vitamins, and the guys who discovered vitamin K had to decide whether they're going to take up one of the old spaces or whether they're going to go for the next step in the chain, which is K. The guys who discovered vitamin K realized that's got quite a huge role in blood clotting and coagulation. The guys who discovered vitamin K were all Germans, and in German coagulation is spelled with a K, so they decided, well, let's stick with vitamin K. It's in any case the next sort of letter in the chain, and it goes very nicely with coagulation because it's a coagulation vitamin, so they decided to stick with vitamin K. And alternative names are retinol, cholecalciferol, tocopherol, and phyloquinone. They dissolve in fat, they're stored in the body's fat tissue, and then the liver can also store AD and K. Daily intake's not required, unlike with the water-soluble vitamins, because you can store so much of it in your fat and liver, and fat-soluble vitamin deficiency might take years to manifest. You do need to take in some fat to absorb your vitamins. If you have a fat-deficient diet or fat-free diet, you might develop a deficiency of A, D, E, and K even if you are taking in enough vitamins, because you simply cannot absorb those vitamins even though you're taking them in if your diet is fat-free or fat-deficient. And quickly, the functions of fat-soluble vitamins. Vitamin A is a component of rhodopsin in the eye for vision, of epithelial tissue, and our mucopolysaccharide enzymes. D is used for bone, as a bone and calcium homeostatic regulators. Recently been discovered to have other functions as well in the immune system. Vitamin E is traditionally considered to be the antioxidant. There was much promise in vitamin E research where people thought that if we give you lots of vitamin E, we're going to improve your antioxidant process in the human body and protect you from cancer, for example. What actually happens if you give a person too much vitamin E is that it shuts down certain immunological processes. Certain immune system processes require the generation of oxidants to destroy tumor cells and infections, and actually if you're taking too much vitamin E for too long, you actually have a higher risk of cancer because you're cancelling out your oxidative processes, which are used in some anti-cancer mechanisms in your body. So vitamin E is also immunomodulator and modulates how your immune system works, and basically pushes it away from generating free radicals as an immune system defense mechanism, and it also has some platelet inhibitory activity. Vitamin K, as mentioned, is involved in coagulation. Coagulation is spelled with a K in German. It's involved in the synthesis of vitamin K dependent pro and anticoagulant factors. Warfarin is anticoagulant because it prevents vitamin K from being used for pro-coagulant factors. Bear in mind that vitamin K is also involved in some anticoagulant factors, and our pro-coagulant factors have much longer half-lives than our anticoagulant factors. So if you give warfarin to a patient, you first knock out your anticoagulant production, and because they have short half-lives, they die off. And so for the first 3 days on warfarin therapy, your patient is a pro-coagulant state because these pro-coagulant factors are still present. So paradoxically, warfarin makes you a puts you into a pro-coagulant state in the first 3 days, which is why if you've ever managed DVT in a hospital environment, you put the patient on Clexane at the same time, or some other heparin at the same time as your warfarin. The Clexane knocks out these pro-coagulant factors in the first 3 days of therapy, and then only does the warfarin's anticoagulant effect kick in. These are my references. I've prepared this lecture from multiple sources, and I hope you found this lecture informative and useful for the completion of your FSG 880 Masters in Sports Medicine.